Streets of Rage 2 is one of the most iconic games released for the Mega Drive. With bold graphics, satisfying fighting, and an exceptional soundtrack, it moved the genre out of the shadow of straight arcade ports such as Golden Axe and Alien Storm. While there had been a Streets of Rage 1, it felt more in line with those arcade titles. Indeed, the first game's Summon Artillery feels a lot like Golden Axe's Magic or Alien Storm's Super Attacks. The sequel took its own direction. But this was 1993. Game Gear was selling well in many territories, so a port to the handheld made sense. And with the Master System's similar hardware, a release on that platform was easily reached, and justifiable with the system's long tail, especially here in Europe. But the Master System was derived from the 1983 Sega Mark III, and the Game Gear derived from that. The target hardware was over a decade old. Compromises would have to be made. These sorts of ports often produced ambitious but hard-to-play efforts, like the Game Gear version of Mortal Kombat 2. Today we're going to go through the game and look at those compromises, and why in my opinion they were the right calls, producing a fun brawler that plays well. I'll generally be focusing on the Mega Drive and Game Gear versions, but do note the Master System version is very much the same mechanically, just with a larger viewport. The differences start before you even boot the games. Let's look at the EU boxes for the Mega Drive and Game Gear versions, and we can immediately see something's missing, or rather a someone. That's right, Max is totally absent. The game's plot is that Adam from the first game has been kidnapped to lure Axel and Blaze into a trap as revenge for the previous defeat of the Syndicate, and Axel's friend Max and Adam's little brother Skate join the team. So why no Max in the Game Gear version? A reminder on resolutions. The Mega Drive version of the game runs at 320 by 224, and the Game Gear at 160 by 144. These are not 4:3 aspect ratios and would have been stretched by the displays of the era, so unless we're peeking at sprites, all footage here has been resampled to a 4:3 ratio to look closest to how it would have hit your eye at the time. All footage is captured using the venerable Kager emulator, and integer scaled for chunky pixels. Whilst I could add CRT or LCD filters, it wouldn't be authentic. So let's enjoy some nice solid colours. Storage limitations probably meant a fourth full-size sprite set would be a reach, particularly with all the frames of animation for all the attacks. But why ditch Max? Well, he's by far the largest character. On the Mega Drive, Axel is 47 by 77, fitting into 6 by 10 tiles, a tile being a 8 by 8 piece of graphics data which sprites are made up of. And on the Game Gear he's 18 by 31, fitting into a 3 by 4 grid. So a proportional Max would be shrunk from 60 pixels tall to about 23, taking 3 by 5 tiles. Just going over to the height limit into the next tile and squeezing in horizontally. But this is just for their tallest standing frames of animation. As soon as Max starts a walk cycle, he's going to need an extra tile on the horizontal. The Mega Drive can cope with up to 20 8x8 tiles on a single line. The Game Gear is limited to only 8 such tiles, and spending half your sprite budget on just the hero would cause more sprite flicker. I'd also argue he's narratively more disposable. Skate has the family connection, which maybe carries more weight than a friend of a comrade. Booting the game, we have our modified trio show up with all the expected bombast, and yes, this game does support 2 players via a link cable. I've never seen a link cable in person, so I've never had a chance to try this or a couple of other Game Gear games I owned with 2-player modes. We have the expected option menu where you can change the difficulty, the life count, and the sound test. The removal of Max does leave Axel somewhat awkwardly filling the big guy slot, but we have 3 characters who play differently, so on to stage 1. Right away we can see everything is much smaller, and a good compromise can be seen here already in the status bar. With only 144 pixels of vertical resolution, info has been cut down to just the player's score, lives, life, and number of super moves. We'll come on to the super moves later. Time to finally punch some miscreants, and the action feels good. Axel's standing combo is great, with his extra star in technique manifesting as a double hit on the third blow, the straight punch, which can help lock down enemies. Regular enemies do not get their health shown, as without room for their names it would probably be too confusing to match whose health is whose, particularly when you start getting overlapping foes. Axel himself is looking quite a bit smaller. taking up 22% of the screen as opposed to the 37% of the screen in the original. This effect is much more pronounced on the Master System with its larger viewport. One major change in this game is the health draining special moves, assigned to the C button in the original. Here, they're more complicated, with either up-down 1 or left-right 1 for the standing defensive version, and forward plus both buttons for the offensive version. But they don't use health here. It does feel like the Dragon Smash has less range and a narrower hurt box, and as such it's easier to whiff. Again, this feels like a deliberate compromise. The move requires a more deliberate input, it's less effective, so let's remove the health penalty. As we approach Jack here, you'll see we do get a health bar for him, but boss health bars just kind of extend off the end and don't move until you get them down to the last bar. I do wonder if there was something they could have done here with symbols or numbers to show how much extra health was poking off the end, but perhaps how the health bar is rendered leaves this as not an option. There could be some kind of line trick at work here. A colour to show that there's more health, like the blue of the Mega Drive, may have been one colour too far. There are only 32 colours available as opposed to the Mega Drive 61. There may simply have been not one free. Moving into the club, we have the breakable furniture, the enemies, Electra's introduction, and then head into the alleyway to fight Barbon. Barbon himself has a keep away mechanic here. The third hit causes him to flinch back and counter with the roundhouse kick. With him dispatched, we move on to the amusement park? That's right, as part of the cuts, the highway stage is missing. We head straight from the alleyway behind the bar to the amusement park. At least we don't have to fight yet. I feel this is plausible. Barbon's bar is near the amusement park. That can make total sense with the level layout. As a way to expand what's retained, the amusement park has been split into two different stages. The first part is the pirate ship, though the arcade part is now just a corridor leading to the hold and onto the deck, where the level ends with a fight against two Hanzos. Stage 3 then is new, but old. Alien Adventure. You head out of the attraction, down a boulevard, past two Electras, and into the Maw of the Beast. Here you have riders attacking you on bikes, and the eggs holding goodies, though this time there is no explosion. Heading into the hive, you do still have a fight with Zamza before moving on to the final boss of the stage. Nova Helitz this time. My theory is the multi-jointed sprite would have taken up too many sprite slots. If Axel is 3 tiles wide, the Helit's head should probably come out to be 4 or 5, and that doesn't leave any sprites left for anything else, particularly for the segments of the body if they end up on the same line as Axel. Perhaps it could have been done if you mounted it onto the roof, but instead we get this walking copyright violation. Without a name on the boss bar, the fan sites call him, predictably, Predator. With jump kicks, backflips, the cloaking device with a lock-on laser, he's not actually that tough of a fight, certainly easier than Zamza. Walk vertically when he's charging his plasma shot, get close and combo him. He has no breakout or cancel, so just get a couple of punches in, cancel into a Dragon Smash, and do a huge amount of damage. So I've mentioned the sprite limit a few times, and I want to show you some of the side effects. You'll notice that when Axel gets knocked down around a lot of foes, there tends to be a little bit of flicker, and if we zoom in here we can see that not all of Axel's sprite is drawn. Now, the original Game Gear screen did not have a very fast refresh rate. Indeed, it's downright sluggish. What this means is the flicker effect wasn't as obnoxious on real hardware, and also explains the rather pedestrian scrolling speed. Too much movement could really leave a Game Gear game looking smeary. I remember having Desert Speed Trap, a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote game, but between the smaller viewport of the Game Gear and the fast scrolling, the game was basically unviewable in motion. You had to play rather slowly, which doesn't fit a fast platformer with tight time limits. Having just gotten back on track with Alien Adventure, we're missing another stage, and this one's a big one. The baseball stadium level is completely absent. This includes the elevator battle, the first of several, and a staple of the brawler. This also means there's no arena battle against Abadidi. That said, I do think things line up even without it. The original story is there's a secret dock the Syndicate is using, and so you need to get down there and board the ship. Having it next to the amusement park also works though. It's got a pirate attraction, there's probably water, a nearby key. That said, we do not baseball, and it is unlike Boo. Aboard the ship, things proceed through the hold and onto the deck as in the original. While the Grenadier bikers are missing, the flow is similar. This is the first place you will fight Jet as a mid-boss, and the battle with Arbear rounds out the stage. Missing again is the jungle level, the road from the ship to the Syndicate complex. In the Game Gear version, you go straight from the ship into the factory. Again, I think this makes sense. Why would the ship not dock right into the factory? Why is there a ruined road? You do miss the dramatic battle with Stealth and Souther against the Moonlit compound, but we're back on track entering the Syndicate munitions factory. I do want to take a moment to talk about the sound. Streets of Rage 2 is renowned for its soundtrack, and if you watch much other retro content, Yuzo Koshiro's score will turn up constantly in the background. His excellent use of the Mega Drive's Yamaha synth and bold compositions are iconic. So how does that fare on the Game Gear's PSG-based audio? 3 square wave channels and a noise channel? Well, the noise channel is mostly used for sound effects, but I do think the square waves have a certain rawness to them. But Yuzo Koshiro is on hand again, even enjoying a credit on the title screen. While some tracks do share names, they're very different, so comparison would be pointless. Instead, let's just enjoy a few samples of what I think are some of the better tracks. Back to the action and the Syndicate factory. The scrolling background belts of parts are gone, replaced with colour cycling to give the impression of movement, like the conveyors. The bikers throwing grenades are replaced with little bots instead, which blow up with a single hit point and if you grapple them. Sadly, you cannot pick them up and throw them into your foes, but you can set them off with a jump kick or a thrown weapon and let the lingering explosion damage some enemies. Sadly, the elevator battle of the second scene is gone, replaced with more factory with a purple hue and half-complete X-robots staring at you from the wall. Flame vents add a little more challenge to spacing and position, and do offer a chance to get some extra damage in, along with the recycle of the Predator as a mini-boss. This second scene ends with a fight against your first X-robot before heading onto the roof, taking out a jet, and fighting 2 X-robots, this final battle resembling the original. And finally moving on to the Syndicate Tower. Before we go to the Syndicate Tower though, let's take a moment to go over the moveset changes a little more. Really, everything's here. The standing combo grapples backwards and forwards with vaulting and slams, throw recovery with up and jump, and the now not training super moves. The only thing I could see missing was you only have 1 jumping attack, not 2. In the original, Axel could smash his knees downwards or do a flying kick, but here it's all knees. Again, this could be to keep sprite width more manageable, or there's just not enough ROM space for the extra frame. Also missing is the hold down and release attack, like Axel's snap kicks. What has been added though is a new special move, limited in uses and tricky to use. By holding down 1, you can charge a special attack until you crouch and then release to launch the attack. Axel gets the Soul Striker, a line-based move. Blaze gets a less powerful whirlwind attack, but it hits everything on that side of her. And Skate gets the less damaging still, but whole screen, Pinball Assault. I do love the sound effects on this one. You can also find extras as bin items in the form of stars. Syndicate Headquarters, the final leg. Here the Game Gear version uses the same motif of reusing the main theme to great effect, as you fight past plush carpets and palm trees towards an elevator fight. A brawler feels incomplete without one, and it's welcome here as the ones from the baseball stadium and the factory were skipped. You don't get the window out onto each floor, and the transitions are masked by the screen going dark. I suspect this is to avoid smeariness from fast vertical scrolling. The illusion of movement instead is given by flying arrows and what I'm fairly sure is a colour cycling effect on the walls. Upon reaching the penthouse, things should look fairly similar. We have some scrubs, Shiva, and Mr. X. As an aside, for the longest time I thought Shiva was a woman. Between the small sprite, long hair, and mistaking the open gi for a bust line, I thought Shiva was some Amazonian martial artist, here depicted a head taller than Axel, when their canon heights are meant to be the same. Like Barbon, Shiva is given a flinching animation, ducking back and punishing you if you try to complete a combo. Finally, Mr. X gets up. The fight is more straightforward than the Mega Drive version as he doesn't have any mooks, but it's a familiar fight, darting around, blazing away with a Tommy gun, and no match for a well-timed suplex. With Mr. X dead and the Syndicate destroyed, Adam is freed from his cell. This sequence once again shows that Mac's absence doesn't need to be keenly felt. Axel helps Adam to his feet as he sees his little brother. An arm wrestle shows Blaze and Adam they're still buddies, and the gang welcome the rescue helicopter. So, what's the conclusion here? Porting a Halo title of the Mega Drive down to the 8-bit hardware was always going to involve a lot of compromises, but I think those involved did a great job, seeing what wouldn't work on the hardware and losing it or modifying it, rather than fighting a losing battle to keep everything. What we got was an excellent, fun brawler that captures the feel and style of the original, and is a great title for the platform. This is my first published and rated video, and there's no theme yet, other than weird old games I want to talk about. Would you like to see more about the Game Gear? Maybe about the home micros I had, particularly the later Amiga titles. Maybe some streaming. Let me know in the comments below, and thank you for watching.